December 2nd of 2004, I was sitting in a traffic light and I was rear-ended by a driver, and I was pushed into the intersection, pulled over, to get out of the intersection. Luckily was able to do that, and it turned out this driver had dropped his cell phone on the floor of his car and went under the dash to get it as he was driving into me. He admitted full fault for the accident, and his insurance company did as well. I was taken home by a friend of mine. The next day I was in insane pain, and that's basically how I lived for 4.5 years, which is how long it took before I even started really getting fixed. I immediately went for care, of course, the next day, found out that I had a concussion, and I knew I had severe injuries to my spine, but I didn't personally know what was wrong. Went to chiropractor, was in treatment with one particular person for 6 months, who has a very well-respected practice. But as it turns out, he had not identified what was wrong, which is that my atlas, which is the top bone under my skull, was seriously displaced. Now, if it's displaced even 1 degree more, people die. And in my case, it was so severe that from the moment of the accident, I felt like I wanted to pull my head off my body. I couldn't understand why my head felt like it was on wrong.
So a disc was displaced?
The vertebra itself, the atlas, which is called C1, is your top vertebra, and it was knocked out of place. So essentially what that does, if you can imagine, your spine is all connected, all the vertebrae are connected. So that vertebra being knocked out, my entire spine was twisted. So every muscle, nerve, tissue, all along the whole length of my torso was pulled to one side because my spine was twisted. The word they use in the chiropractic and medical language is rotated. So all I knew is I was in incredible pain. I was having severe neurological problems. I couldn't breathe properly. I had gastrointestinal issues. My bowel has not worked since the day of the accident, which is a very serious condition that's been ignored by every single medical doctor I've seen. It's typically called Cauda-Kine syndrome, which means that the nerves in the lower lumbar region of my spine were damaged in that accident, which we now know for sure because I have herniated discs, bulging discs, etc. But none of this was somehow of concern to any of the medical or chiropractic providers who I saw, and no one treated it as being important, even though it's supposed to be considered a medical emergency. So I've had the most incredible amount of malpractice throughout this whole ordeal that's even imaginable, and even today I have not been treated for my bowel dysfunction by any of the medical doctors that I'm supposedly currently, or neurologists that I'm supposedly currently in the care with. So from that moment of that accident, I was living in this insane pain. I couldn't walk properly. My hips were completely off, my shoulders are completely off, which is what happens because when your atlas is knocked out and your spine is twisted, obviously every structure of your body is off kilter. And I ended up being in treatment constantly of just driving myself to any place that I could try to get relief, like musculoskeletal treatments, myofascial treatments, anything to try to realign my body, and nothing was working. I mean, any treatment I had would basically give me relief for a few hours, maybe a few days, just enough to keep limping along and make it to the next day, more or less. And luckily, because I had already researched for a book I wrote years ago, a lot of things about holistic health, I knew about colon hydrotherapy. I mean, I knew immediately when my bowels weren't working, this is a very serious problem. I mean, the symptoms of toxicity that you have to live with when your bowels don't work every single day are insane. And I knew I had to somehow get clean. And so I started going to colon hydrotherapy almost immediately. Luckily, there was a nurse in my area who did it, and I saw her for 2 years. I saw a nurse in a different city for 2 years after that. And to date, that's how I've been able to live, is colon hydrotherapy. And then what happened is I paid for 450 treatments out of my own pocket, because Farmers Insurance, which is the insurance of the guy that hit me, never ultimately paid a dime, even though they admitted full fault for the accident. They didn't even investigate my claim. they told me for 2 years, oh, they'd pay, and right at the what's called the statute of limitations, they sent me a letter saying, oh, we'll pay $2,000. Well, at that point, I'd already had, I think, almost 300 treatments just to survive, and no real treatment to fix the problems. And they just basically ignored the entire situation, which I later found out is a common tactic that insurance companies use. But I had believed them all that time. They told me you have to pay for your own care, and then when your care is over, then we reimburse you. So I had to hire an attorney to sue them. Meanwhile, I'm just still trying to struggle and live every day. And the attorney, a couple months into it, just kind of fell off the face of the earth. He withdrew from the case, never notified me, which is unconscionable. It's a total bar violation. But for whatever reasons, he disappears. And so that was it. My action against farmers was done. My own insurance company is USAA. They were notified the day after the accident by farmers. Farmers admitted full fault. USAA took that moment in time, the day that I called after the accident, to say, oh, just so you know, you don't have uninsured motorist or med pay on your policy. And I'm standing there in my kitchen in this incredible pain going, what are you talking about? I have the highest limits on my policy for everything you can have. And they were stonewalling me, and I asked them to send me my deck sheets, my declaration sheet, which would show my coverages, and they did not. They instead sent me something like 30 pages of deck sheets from many other periods of time, but none covering the period of time of my accident. And to date, USAA has continued to stonewall me. They will not.
Your own insurance company.
My own insurance company that I have had for 17 years. I had 10 policies with them at the time of the accident, all my homes, my life insurance, a car loan, things like that. I think I paid them actually $25,000 in premiums just in the 3 years prior to my accident for all the things that I had insured with them. USAA is the insurance company for the military in the United States, all dependents and people who are employed by the military. And I trusted them. That's why you have insurance. And they, to date, have not talked to me on the phone. I will call them, and for the first 3 years I was calling them saying, I need help. I need money to pay for my expenses. I have med pay. Why am I not getting anything from you guys? Why are you not talking to me? Well, at this point, what they've done, they've dug their own graves so deep, because you cannot, as an insurance company, ignore your insured. They have had letters from me, they have had phone calls from me saying I was on the verge of death, I'm in the emergency room, I'm trying to live, can you pay for an MRI for $450? Can you pay for an MRI so we can see what's wrong with my spine? No, we can't do that, we can't do anything. So the first time I even got a letter from USAA was the day that I called them and said, I think today I'm going to die. And if I'm going to die, I'm going to let everyone in this country know what you're doing. I'm picking up the phone, I'm calling the media. And I got a call back from USAA in 1 hour, and all of a sudden I was insured. Had been all along. Don't know how that happens. Just don't go to the media, whatever you do. Well, the truth of the matter is, it's very hard to go to the media because I'm so exhausted all the time, just trying to take care of my injuries and proceed in life. So at any rate, what happened is I ended up not being able to work or have any social or romantic life from the moment of the accident. So to date, that's been 5 years. I was basically secluded in my home, and what I did to make money is I bought and sold property, which I already had been starting to do in volume because it was a good investment.